Okay, so example starting with number 4. These say to copy and complete the table of values for the function. So you're given the function y is equal to negative 3x squared, and then it gives you a table of x values and it wants you to find the missing y values. Okay, so you're given negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. They may not always give you those values. They may sometimes give you other ones. But it wants us to plug in negative 2 for x and see what y value we get. So if I plug in negative 2 for x, what do I get? Negative 12. How about if I plug in negative 1? Negative 3. How about 0? 1.
3. No, negative 3.
Negative 3. 2.
Negative 12.
Negative 12.
Wait.
What do you notice about this table?
Negative.
Okay, remember they're mirror images. So this is going to give you a parabola, right? So whatever values are on the left of your 0 value, okay, it's going to be equal to whatever's on the right of it.
So you put the x, and then you square it, and then you times it by the negative 3. Okay.
Alright, so then the next one say to graph the function and compare the graph with the graph of y equals x squared. Not really worried about the compare part. We'll do that in a later section. This part we're just going to be graphing them and finding the pieces that are missing, or not that are missing, that you don't know. So 8 is y is equal to 5x squared. Okay, so this part, it doesn't have the plus something x plus some number. Okay, so we only have the a value for this one. So I want to try to find my axis of symmetry. Okay, meaning that I'm going to have x is equal to negative b over 2a. But if I don't have a b, what does that mean that that's equal to?
0.
Okay, so I end up with, in technicality, 0 over 2 times 5, which is just 0. So my axis of symmetry is at x is equal to 0.
Is the a the 5?
Yes. Okay, so you need to clearly label, okay, you need to circle. I'm not going to go looking on your test paper to try to find and say, oh, I think that's what they believe the axis of symmetry is. You need to make it very clear. Maybe even do this. That just makes it a lot easier. Okay, and then it'll help you when you're going back and actually graphing it. You're going to need all of these pieces. I'm not just doing them to do them. I'm doing them because you need them to actually graph your function. Okay. So then your vertex, you're plugging in whatever x value you get here, okay, to get your y value. So you're going to do y is equal to 5 times 0 squared. And what is that?
0.
0. So then you would need to do something like this. Show me that your vertex is at 0, 0. Okay. So another piece of the puzzle here. Okay, your vertex, axis of symmetry clearly shown. So then you're going to want to graph the function. Okay, I don't care how perfect they are. Just like ballpark, okay. I don't even really care. The ones where the vertex is at 0, 0, doesn't really matter if you have all the little tick marks on there. But this one, there's, well, okay. Typically what I do, okay, plot your vertex at 0, 0. Now, when I had Mr. Cass, we weren't allowed to do what I'm about to show you. Okay? He made us know what this 5 did without having to write anything. But I never liked that way, so I would do the next step that I'm about to show you on paper and then I'd erase it. And he never knew. It'll make your life a lot easier if you're like, oh no, I understand that the 5 in front of the A means that this is going to happen. Totally fine. That won't always work for you. That's why I do this method. He was very adamant that we just knew in our brains what to do. So, pick another point that's easy. Okay, so I'm going to choose 1. So when x is equal to 1, I want to know what y is going to be equal to, so I'm going to plug it in. So y is equal to 5 times 1 squared, which is equal to 5. So I'm going to add on 2 more little tick marks here at the top. So at 1, or here, I'm going to do this in a different color. At 1, I'm going to plot a point at 5. And then because we said that our axis of symmetry, here, I'm going to try to write it in green here. If it's on the axis like this and you're just using a pencil, just draw like 3 dotted lines past the axis itself, because I'm never going to see a dotted pencil line on a pencil line. It's not going to happen. So just draw like 3 dotted lines past it just so that we can see that it's there. Okay, so what's true about one side of the axis? Okay, if you're 1 away on the right side, you're also 1 away on the left side. So we can find the mirrored point at -1 over there. And then now I'm just going to essentially connect my dots and draw my parabola.
So he wouldn't let you like do the math for it?
Correct.
Oh.
Like, you know how we did the table for number 4?
Yeah.
You could graph every parabola problem this way if all I was asking you to do was graph it. I want to know what the axis of symmetry and the vertex is, because it's good to know where those things are and understand that, yes, I understand your calculator can graph for you. This is the little bit of graphing, and these couple sections is like pretty much all the graphing that we do. So, anyways, but this would show this clearly labeled, okay? I would recommend, okay, I typically want you to write like axis of symmetry to point that out, especially if you're doing pencil on pencil. Okay, it just makes it very clear that I know, like, okay, you know this is the axis of symmetry. These problems don't ask you for it, but if we get to the problems that do and it wanted to know if it's a min or a max, okay, you would have, in this case, it can't go ever any lower than this, but it goes up forever. So we have a minimum or a min at x is equal to 0. Okay, these problems don't actually ask, but I'm going to go ahead and just start pointing that out so that you get used to it, because especially if you go past this class, you have to be able to find mins and maxes. So seeing it early with something that's relatively simple makes your life a lot easier. All right, any questions about this one? Okay, so far? Okay. All right, number 10, y is equal to negative x squared. All right, so first thing I want to look at is my axis of symmetry. So negative b over 2a. Is there a b value?
No.
So what is my axis of symmetry?
0.
So my axis of symmetry is that x is equal to 0. So there's piece number 1. I need my vertex. So when x is equal to 0, what is y?
0.
Okay, 0. So my vertex is at 0, 0. So one like this, you don't really need to show the math. Okay, when we get to where there's a b value and a c value, stuff like that, it's going to be a little different. We're going to need to actually be showing it, okay, plugging it in. But I think you can plug in 0 pretty easily without any issues. So anyways, all right, so there's my vertex. So then I'm going to go ahead and set up my graph. And what do you notice about this problem?
It's negative.
So what does that mean is going to happen?
It's opening down.
Okay, yep, it's going to open down. I'm going to go ahead and draw in my axis of symmetry. Okay, it's at x is equal to 0, so I'm just going to extend. Okay, I'm just going to extend my graph like that. I'm going to draw a little arrow and say axis of symmetry to make it very clear that that's where it is. My vertex is at 0, 0, so I'm going to plot that point. Okay, again, I'm going to pick a really easy point. Okay, I always try to pick, if 0 is an option, I try to pick 0. If 1's an option, I try to pick that. Those are the two easiest things. If not, I try to pick something that doesn't look like the math is going to be obnoxious. Don't have like 3x squared and choose the number 3, because then you're going to be graphing the number 27, and that is brutal. Okay, pick something easy. Okay, to make your life a lot simpler. So when x is equal to 1, what would y be equal to?
Negative.
Okay, y would be -1. Okay, and that's another reason to always look and see if this number is positive or negative, because if you have, one of those moments that happen sometimes and you're like, oh, well, that would be -1 squared, so that means that that's going to be +1. Your graph's going to look like it's opening up, but then you can say, wait, but my thing was negative, so it has to be opening down, and you'd realize something was wrong. So that's another good way to help. So at 1, it's -1. Whatever happens on one side of the axis happens on the other. So we can just copy that point over. And then I can connect my dots. Okay, and technically this is supposed to be like rounded off. It's not supposed to be like at a point, but it's very difficult. As long as you're not like this with it, okay, that would be an absolute value function, not a parabola. So, anyways, as long as that's the case, then we're good.
I don't even know.
Okay, so in this case, do I have a min or a max?
Max.
Okay, so you'd have a max at x is equal to 0. Okay, when you're doing your homework problems, you can go ahead and put that, like, write this step in if you want. It's not a required step in these problems, but like I said, you start getting used to it now, it makes your life easier later. And they're not all going to just be right at 0, 0. So, of course, we need to get something that gets a little bit more difficult.
I know. It should just be that.
If it was just these, our lives would be super easy. All right, 14. Y is equal to 4x squared plus 1. All right, so I would say when you start adding things to them, okay, when you start getting a B and a C value, I would almost recommend you go ahead and write if it opens up or down just from the beginning so that you don't get confused. So what direction is this one going to open? Okay, opens up. So I want my axis of symmetry. I want to find that. So where would that be in this case?
There is a B this time.
No.
Is there really?
Actually,
No. Wait.
no.
Is there
Oh, no,
just an
there's
x by
not.
itself?
It's a C.
There's a C this time.
C.
There's still no B. So negative B over 2a is going to be 0. So my axis of symmetry is still at x is equal to 0.
Tricked me.
Okay, but now I can't just say, oh, x is 0, so y is 0.
There's a
Not true, because there's a C value. So for my vertex,
0, 1.
okay,
Shadow one.
when x is 0, y is 1. So my vertex is at 0, 1.
0, 0.
Okay, so two things that I need here. So, setting up my graph.
Just cannot do all of that.
The x-axis shouldn't be a problem. You should have lines on your paper.
My y line's like actually good, but then whenever it comes to the x, it's like
Oh.
squiggles.
You have a line on your paper.
I know.
I know. But my pencil's like, meow. I have like a
always,
switch in my
I always
scissors
draw
also.
the line where the middle's not on the line.
I know.
So it's
And then, like,
bruh.
my Y line's always like slanted to the side. I just can't.
See, that's why you just need to get an iPad and an Apple Pencil.
You're right.
I'm not sure.
It's okay. If you look back to my notes from high school, I've got stuff going everywhere on my paper. I hated lined paper for math. So once I got to Mr. Cass when he didn't care anymore,
You have
I was unlined paper all the way. I would buy drawing notebooks to do my.
The issue is, I can't draw. I mean, I can't write straight. So yeah, my graphs will look fine, but my notes will be like, or up. They'll be like this.
All right, so I'm going to draw my axis of symmetry. Okay, again, it's at 0, so I'm going to do the dotted line. And then I'm just going to draw an arrow and write AOS, so I know that's where my axis of symmetry is. I'm going to draw in my vertex at 0, 1. Okay, we said it opens up, so again, remember you're looking for a point above that at this point.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to use 1. So when I plug in 1 for x, what do I get?
4.
5.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, whatever's on one side is on the other. You're probably going to get tired of hearing me say that, but it will help you remember later and save you from doing another step of math. And it opened up, so that's always good. Okay, do I have a min or a max?
Min.
Min.
Okay, so a min at x is equal to 0.
I
Oh, 'cause
spelled,
the,
I spelled min with an E.
min.
Okay, and I don't even care if you're like the one where we're doing, okay, where we're plugging in another x value to get another y value so we can actually plot the parabola. I don't care if you show me that math work. Okay, when it gets a little more complicated, you're probably going to want to at least write it down, but something as simple as plugging in a 1 or a 0, you don't really have to show it to me. So.
Wait, why would the min be at 0?
It's at x is equal to 0. So x is still right here.
Oh my gosh, I was thinking of y. I was like, wait, but it's but it's not on x.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
minimum
like
technically
over.
isn't 0. The minimum is the y value, but we say the min is at x is equal to 0. So when x is 0, the y value is the minimum,
Okay.
technically. is.
Words and math.
But that's why I'm just leaving it to where it is right now. When I actually ask you for it in another section,
Okay.
it'll just make your life easier because you know what you're looking for.
See, math just got complicated when they added letters.
I know.
All right. Let's do one more that's a little more complicated. Then tomorrow we'll do 2 that are much more complicated. Not okay. I say that. I just mean the numbers get more confusing because they're fractions.
Oh.
Why
And you would do that to us.
I would
I just said that.
because it doesn't like it. Just sometimes the numbers don't work out nicely.
Yeah.
Like you'll end up with like 6/5. Like it just they don't work out nicely. But that's
Doesn't
just
work
because of the
out.
nature of the problem, and I don't go through and check every single problem as I pick it to see what it's gonna be. So I'm gotta make sure you know how to do the fractions. And y'all are advanced, so you should be able to do that.
Doesn't mean we want to.
Yeah, there's
Doesn't mean I want to either, but
Yeah, just because you're the math teacher doesn't actually mean you want to do the math, right?
it's okay. Yesterday I was doing something.
Yeah, she
And I was trying to total our like fundraiser orders yesterday, and I was trying to add up all the different color bows for the wreaths, and somebody was standing there, and I was like, "Yep, math teacher's gonna get out a calculator because I don't feel like doing this in my head." And they like it didn't register with the people at first, like what I said, and then they like died laughing, and I was
Oh.
like, "Yeah, it's okay. Math teachers need a calculator too." I was trying to add like 19 and 16, and it just like was not registering in my head. I was like, "I'm just gonna get out a calculator."
Sometimes it's like I can't do something.
Wait, what is? Yeah, 35.
The whole math in my head thing is never, well, it used to be really good, and then I got relying on a calculator, and now it's a problem.
Wait, you're just like sitting there like 19.
I was like, well, okay, the 10 and the 10, so that'd be 20, and then I've got 9 and 6, and I was like, I just can't. Like, I literally just couldn't. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Plus, I needed to add other numbers to it, and I was like, forget this. And I was like, oh, I need to subtract this because somebody already got there. And I was like, it's too confusing. Okay, which direction does this one open? Okay, opens up.
A P. Oh, we finally have a B.
Okay, since I have a b value, I'm going to go ahead and find the x, and then I'll write everything else separately. So x is equal to, just since it's been a while since we've had to do this, negative b over 2a. So I'm going to plug it in. So negative times negative 6 over 2 times 3. So that's going to be positive 6 over 6. So that's just 1.
At least they made it easy.
So axis of symmetry is at x is equal to 1. Now, obviously 1 still isn't really bad, but in case it was a bigger number, I'm going to show you how I would write it out just so that if you have any issues, I can see where you went wrong. So I'm going to plug in 1. So 3 times 1 squared minus 6 times 1 plus 4. Okay, again, I wouldn't expect you to write this with a 1 unless you just want to. But if you're starting to get other numbers, I would really recommend you write them because then I can see what happened. And if it's a negative number, you might want to do it because that just causes issues typically. All right, so 3 minus 6 plus 4 is what?
1.
1. So my vertex is at 1, 1. All right, so now my axis of symmetry isn't at 0, so I need to draw the dotted line the whole distance. So all the way. I still like to write axis of symmetry on it just to make it very clear where it is.
If I do it, it's not so like, because I know you're going to know, and so my brain is like, what? Why did I draw that again? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that there?
It does help when you go back to like look over stuff, and then when we get all these other forms, it's going to be nice that you know where it is, you know.
You're like, why did I draw that again? I don't remember.
Choking on saliva.
I
No
do that
worries.
every day.
I did that yesterday.
It's a major
Oh,
problem.
that hurt. And I was like,
And then everybody stares at you.
I'll breathe
Super
in
awkward.
super hard.
I know I was worshiping, and then I choked on spit. I was like,
I choked on my Gatorade at the
Yeah, it was
tennis
bad.
game.
All right, vertex is at 1, 1.
Flash.
Try to get through this problem before the bell rings. Or, well, it's not going to ring, but you know what I mean. All right, so now, because it's at 1, I can either plug in 2 or I can plug in 0.
0.
0 probably
That was
makes the
zero.
most sense. It's the easiest one. Those two things go away, so then I'm just left with 4. So at 0, I'm up at 4. Whatever you do on one side, do to the other. And connect the dots.
What?
oh.
What did I just say? I confused myself.
Okay, so do I have a max or a min?
Min
Where?
at 1.
X equals
Oh,
1.
there it is.
There's the sugar.
Oh, there.
Okay, now sometimes your axis of symmetry may be all the way out at like 3. I still sometimes will choose 0 to be the point that I plug in, depending on what my C value is. If my C value isn't like 22 or something like that, I probably will still choose 0 just because it's easy. It's not requiring a lot of extra work, especially if you get one that has fractions in it. Oh my goodness. And then you just have to go, since you went 3 to the left, you've got to go 3 to the right to plot it. So you'd have to remember it's a mirror image on both sides. So tomorrow we're going to do 24 and 26 probably. Definitely going to do 26, probably also do 24. And then I'll assign problems. I'm only going to make you do 4 problems. But I will give you extra ones that are optional if you feel like you need extra practice. Last year they asked me to give them a few extras just to practice that I thought would be good ones. So just FYI, and then you'll have all of class tomorrow to work on it. So you should be able to knock them out and probably have a little bit of time left over to watch at least your 4.2 video.
I have a question.